Mini episode 511 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Sportsology, delivering unconventional columns and webcasts about sports, TV, music, movies, and more. Follow them on the web at sportsology.info.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
30 seconds.
In front of all these people, you're going to pull out a gun and you're going to shoot an unarmed man.
20 seconds.
So what are you going to do? 10.
Welcome to the FDH Lounge and the Justified episode recap.
It was justified.
With your original dignitaries,
Fire now!
Rick Morris and Jason Jones.
You got ice cold water running through your veins.
Breaking down each Justified episode the moment they've concluded.
Did you take a peek inside the soul of Raiden and you?
I'm just gonna let that old dog lie.
Real-time reactions. Next level analysis.
You seem to be harboring a bit of hostility there, brother.
So I've been told.
And now, your dignitaries.
Well, I believe we can take her from here.
Welcome, everyone, to mini episode number 511 of the FDH Lounge. Rick Morris and Jason Jones, your FDH Lounge dignitaries, breaking down Season 6 of Justified. We're going to be taking a look ahead in the course of this program to what we have, the final run of episodes yet to come, taking a look back at a little bit at Season 5 and the previous seasons, things that have been building thematically throughout the course of the show for this final run of 13 episodes, and what will be the culmination of the vision of executive producer Graham Yost and the man who created this world, the late, great Elmore Leonard. For these purposes, of course, bring in, as always, my man, FDH senior editor, Jason Jones, who is as big of a fan of the show as I am, which is to say one of the very biggest out there. Jason, how you doing, my man? It's Justified season again.
Yeah, it's been really good. He dialed the phone, the whole bit, and as you're talking, I'm getting a little depressed.
Yeah, I know how you feel, and I've been through this fairly recently with Breaking Bad in the fall of 2013, and when you've got an all-time great show that it's winding down to its final run of episodes, it is a little bit depressing. Breaking Bad, it reached its logical culmination, what it had been building towards. I don't think it was ever meant to go longer. This is a conscious decision by Graham Yost, by co-executive producer Tim Oliphant, particularly with the passing of Elmore Leonard and the fact that he's not around for them to consult anymore. But I think all along, this is about how long they thought they were going to take this. I'm guessing that the passing of Mr. Leonard probably tipped it over the edge as far as making that decision. They could have gone longer. They choose to end it now, and it's going to be really, really something to anticipate what they have, and we're going to try and do some of that today, I know.
You know, Rick, the interesting thing to take from this is, as fans of a product, whether we're talking Justified or Breaking Bad, which is a great example, there is such a thing as dragging it on too long, and we're starting to see that with a couple of shows that are not in Justified league, to be honest with you, where you're getting to 8, 10, 12 seasons long. Eventually, you're just rehashing the same old stuff, and at least this way, it gives them an opportunity to build to the end instead of just cutting it off at the end, which is impressive. And as a fan of another show that I believe is in the discussion for arguably best show of all time, if not top 5 of all time, the great thing about Justified is once it's run its course and you can go purchase the collector's edition box set, it is the kind of show that, believe it or not, I really think, maybe not tenuously, but you could rewatch this over and over again throughout the course of your life and still get a great deal of enjoyment out of it. So it's not all bad. It's just, as the fanboy mentality goes, you always want more, but sometimes more makes it a deteriorating product.
Absolutely, and I think we have to give them the benefit of the doubt that this is the right time because, again, and you make an excellent point. Left to our devices, this thing would keep going and going. It's time, somebody has to draw the line, and it's the people in charge of the show and in charge of quality control to make sure that it ends when it's supposed to and ends on the note that it's supposed to. And we're going to be talking about that today in terms of what we'd like to see, what we think we may see, some hints that are out there, some of the great casting for this season. There's a lot for us to get into, certainly, in terms of all of this. And I want to give a little plug also here, too, because when you were talking about different TV shows that are on the air right now. I know you are immersed as never before as the right-hand man over there. Great new website, not just another TVsite.com. The great Jeff Sack, a friend of ours, involved with that, the man behind it. You are right there with him on doing a lot of recaps on a weekly basis. I have agreed to do weekly Justified recaps here, and I'm hopeful that we'll figure out a format where we can embed these post-show segments that you and I are going to be doing in with the reviews. But regardless, people can check out my reviews over there. People can check out your reviews on a whole host of shows. Both you, Jeff, and some of the other people involved over there are tireless right now in recapping and analyzing the very best of TV at this moment.
Yeah, it's actually been a really fun and engaging process. There's a lot of TV sites out there, and with everything else, you've got to figure out how to separate yourself. And basically what it boils down to is we only cover shows that we believe are of a certain quality. And therefore, you can go to some of these other sites and you can find Justified, but you're also going to be inundated with shows that if you're a Justified fan, you really have no desire to follow up on. And this way we try to keep everything on the same level. And the other thing is we are not critics. And Rick, as you'll find out doing them, it's a totally different process. We're not here to tear something down. Matter of fact, if we decide that it's not going a way that we think our readers are going to be interested in, we just gracefully bow out. We have no intention of bad-mouthing a show for our own kicks. So it's not that kind of deal. But it's a great place if you're into that kind of a show like a Justified. It's a great place, even if you saw the episode, to come by and see what somebody else has to say about it. Maybe they saw something from a different perspective or whatever. But it's always very fun, and we're starting to gain a lot of traction. There's a lot of fan bases jumping in, so it's all good fun.
Exactly. I am looking very much forward to being a part of it over there and trying to get a sense of the style that I'm going to need to have to fit in with the rest of the site. It's been challenging for me because I always read your Mulaney reviews because I love Mulaney and I watch it all the time. There are so many shows that I don't watch yet that I don't want to be spoiled on. I have to zero in on the shows that I'm pretty sure I'm never going to watch in order to read the reviews over there so I can get a sense of the style and the expectations and everything like that. So that's been kind of a unique challenge for me because I like to keep my options open for what I might want to watch down the road. And again, it's you never know if you're going to stumble into a pot of gold like we have with this show here. And again, we talked about this. You had when we were doing last season's recaps, you had watched seasons 1 through 4 all before season 5, caught up, I think, in a case of like 16 days, stumbled on the show, decided you liked it. I started watching it midway through season 2 in real time. After season 2 was done, I watched the season 1 and season 2 DVDs. Have watched it in real time ever since. So we've had sort of divergent experiences in terms of how we came to be fans of the show, when we were aware of it, and how we have followed it since. What's interesting is, again, the first season that both of us watched in real time last year, season 5, we did the recaps every week after the show, as we're looking forward to doing again this year. And again, talking about it at the end of the year, I'd like to take a look at the micro of season 5 and the macro of how it fits into the series, because you pointed out all along, we'll talk a little bit about the macro of it and the way that it served as a setup for the final season. But as a micro, I think that's where most of the critical commentary was coming from on the internet, whether it be podcasts like Howlerback, which you and I are somewhat divergent in our enjoyment of that. I generally enjoy listening to them, although I've been critical, and we've both called them out, I think, for being impatient and short-sighted with the show where we felt it was appropriate. But they're sort of representative of a lot of the commentary out there. Didn't like season 5, I think, because of the expectations of season 4, which was, I think, an all-time great season of television with the storyline that they had going on with Drew Thompson, the hunt for Drew Thompson. And you look at the micro last year, the way that it all played out with the Crows, some of that seemed kind of uneven to me, the presentation of that family. The cartel angle plus the angle of tying up the loose threads of the Canadian mob. Raylan's involvement with the character that was played by Amy Smart, in a sense that was paid off later on when Art was guarding her and he got shot. But there was a lot that led up to it as far as their relationship, which never really seemed to make a whole lot of sense to me. I'm definitely critical of a lot of the micro of Season 5 and how they handled it, even if, like I said, we'll talk about this subsequently, the macro of it, setting it up for the final season, they seem to be doing pretty good. What were your thoughts? Because I know at the end of the season, I ranked it as probably my least favorite of the non-Season 1 seasons. Season 1 had a lot of standalones, which I know you and I don't like as much. I ranked it behind 4, I think 2 and 3 in that order. I think you said 4, 3, 2, and 5 in that order. But what were your thoughts about how they handled just the self-contained within the season elements of last year?
Well, as far as any rankings go, I almost have to preface this by saying it's different as you're going through it than if you've gone back and rewatched it, which is where that whole, but Season 1 thing comes up. A lot of people claim that they go in order. And for me, for anyone that's new to this, Season 1 had to be done the way it was done to set up Seasons 2 through. The problem is, if you go back and watch it now, it's kind of pedestrian. Because if you've seen up through Season 5, it's going to feel weird. So, putting that aside, the same thing I think can be said for the Mags Bennett thing. I know everybody wants to say that's the best it's ever been, and I really think that's where it starts. So 2, 3, 4, doesn't really matter which order you put them in, but clearly 5 is before them. So it would probably be something to the effect of, say, 4, 2, 3, then 5, then 1 in order, just in reverse order, just because those Season 1 wasn't phenomenal comparatively. Now, as far as Season 5 goes, it felt like they might have been trying to do a little too much. It felt like they were stepping out of their wheelhouse a little bit. I think just you and I talking off air once, we made the connection there. It's kind of like you have a favorite rock band or whatever, and you're listening, and each album you're so excited for, and then all of a sudden they step out of what they do, and they try to get cute with it, or they try to do something different. And in their minds, maybe it was going to be great, and it just didn't pan out. And if we're talking about some of the little details of Season 5, I think that has to go without saying that it was a little bit different. The Crows, I know what they were trying to do. I just don't know if we actually really got there. There were some great moments with the Crows, but it just felt disjointed somehow. It just didn't feel like it was as concise and as tight as the previous 2, 3, and 4. So, we could talk about the little things that we didn't like. I actually love the way the season started with Dewey Crow and then him being almost petrified with the news of his various family members coming through. Alicia Witt was an important part of the season, but not necessarily a character that I identified with or was sympathized with. So there's a lot of things there that we can say just weren't quite there, but like every great show, I would still put up Season 5 of Justified against 90% of what's on television right now.
I would agree, and it's sort of like that cliche about bad pizza is better than, I don't know if it's most other food, or I'm sure there's a snappier way of saying it, but
sure.
Again, whether it be pizza, sex, whatever analogy you want to make of it, that it's only ever going to be at a certain suboptimal level, and I would agree with you. Justified certainly fits into that on a week-to-week basis. Again, part of it too is I was extra hyped for last year, knowing that we were going to be introducing this format with the program and doing the analysis every week. And I guess I just had it in my head that it was going to be as great as Season 4 was, which to me is the standard. And again, I think Season 4, Season 2, Season 3, Season 5, probably in that order. And I was a little bit disappointed in that, but there were some things, and you kept pointing out also, too, the book will not be fully in on Season 5 until the series is done. And I feel like, again, with getting the DVD, as I recently did here, with going back and reading some of the reviews of it at the time, at the end of the season, they did do a better job, maybe than I was giving them credit for, with my high expectations at the time, on the macro level, how it fits into the entire series. The obvious thing would be the way that they wrapped up the Orange is the New Black storyline with Ava through the course of the season, which side note, from watching a little bit of the actual show, I've been less impressed with that than I thought I was going to be, and not really my cup of tea. So maybe the Ava thing should have been a tip-off to me that I wasn't going to find it as engrossing as maybe some other people. But, another thing, too, that I saw that was highlighted, I think it was AV Club when I was reading one of the reviews there, the whole thing later in the year of what turned out to be the Boyd-Raylan split, of where, again, they've always been people who situationally will use one another as things come up, but that, again, I guess I didn't attach the significance to it at the time. Raylan hits up Boyd for help in trying to bring down Danny Crow. When Boyd was only of a certain amount of help, Raylan basically loses patience with him and it's like, okay, F you, we got this file on you, we're going to use it now. And then subsequently, in the final episode of the season, when Boyd ends up getting rescued by the marshals when the cartel had come up there, that was another kind of sign of the rupture between Boyd and the other folks on the side of the law once and for all, because, again, they were used to being in strange bedfellow situations with him. But you got the sense there that things were really going to be different and that they had pretty much lost all patience with him, and that really kind of set the tone for what we saw at the very end. It was a shocker, but at the very end, you had the setup with Ava and Raylan meeting out by the bridge and planning what was going to happen, that she had gotten out of jail to become the informant for Boyd. So do you get the sense that, again, well, you and I definitely have some, I think, logical criticisms about the micro of the season, the self-contained elements, that in setting up for season 6 that they checked off a lot of the right boxes?
Yeah, you're tapping into something that's really important. I think a lot of people are probably going to overlook. We've got the book on you bit. We first, as you're going through it, the first time you hear that, you're like, yeah, okay, whatever, it's Boyd. What are you going to do? But at some point, and I'm sure there's a better pop culture reference that I can come up with, but just off the top of my head, this is De Niro and Pacino at the diner in Heat. And at some point, you got to ask yourself, how long can these two really sort of stare each other down? And if we go back to our previous conversations, the fact that there is a relative sort of OK Corral standoff situation that really adds a certain texture to the show. It's not literally like Boyd and Raylan, walk into the street, take 10 paces, turn around, and shoot. It's not that kind of thing, but metaphorically, it happens all the time. There's standoffs all the time that really add grit to the show. And the question becomes, how long is that really going to just be an even standoff? And I think the answer is it can't go on forever. So when they said they had the book on him, it should have been something that we should have seen as a foreshadowing that at some point it's going to come to a head, things are going to get real, and there needs to be a winner. Now, we have no idea what the definition of crowning the winner will be. And also, as we keep this process going, we can't discredit the scenario with
the sheriff, Art, yeah.
Right, and there's the physical, what's Art going to do, but at the end of the day, there has been somewhat of a relative father-son relationship, even though as of late it's kind of been torn apart with with what happened on the tarmac at the end of season 4. But at some point, I got to believe that if Art's going to walk away, and I would imagine he is, he's getting to that age, it becomes less of trying to figure out who is going to replace Art maybe, and a little bit more of what Raylan is going to do to try to mend the fences and do this for Art. So I do think that at the end of season 6, we are going to have closure to some degree, one way or the other, as to who the winner is between this Raylan and Boyd thing, and we would absolutely be crazy to think that that Boyd just walks off into the sunset. But that's what season 6 will be for, is to figure out the answers to these questions.
You're right about that. And by the way, a little bit of a, I'm going to say somewhat tongue-in-cheek crossover here between this show and another one of my favorite shows. Did you happen to catch because I know you're an enthusiast of it also. Did you happen to catch the season premiere of Kroll Show last week?
I did not.
Okay. Here's a little something for you.
Winter premiere.
I can't even believe I'm teasing any kind of crossover between the shows, but I kind of am. The one new element that they had on the show as far as, and again, for anybody out there who hasn't checked it out, Kroll Show excels at, I'd say the majority of them are reality TV satires, but there's also satires and parodies of other types of TV shows. They've introduced a new parody of an anti-hero detective show called Dead Girl Town. And Nick Kroll plays this jaded detective who plays by his own set of rules, whatever. His sidekick on the show is played by Erica Tazel, who, of course, plays Rachel on Justified, playing a very Rachel kind of character. Exasperated with him, a lot of eye-rolling at his antics. It is one of the greatest things I've ever seen, quite frankly, as far as the casting of it, and more or less dropping the character of Rachel into a Nick Kroll sketch. So,
the funny thing,
an ongoing thing.
There's two things about that really stand out to me. One is trying to imagine the literal Rachel in a realm like that is automatically funny. I don't even need to see to know that that's funny. And the other thing is, this isn't the first one, because I think we're starting to see a little bit of the serious drama actors on really successful, really great shows that are sort of stepping out of themselves for a second and say, let's give this a try. It might be fun. Earlier, I think last week maybe, I just caught the story. I didn't actually see the sketch, but I saw that the guy that played Toby on The West Wing, Richard Schiff, who's pretty much only been in serious stuff ever, was on a Key and Peele sketch. So I invite it. The idea of Rachel on Kroll Show has me at this moment trying to see if I can catch that episode on Comedy Central on their website.
Yeah. It is amazing. It made me laugh so hard when I saw it last week, and my first thought is, why didn't Jason tell me about this? Because I had forgotten Kroll Show was on. I caught it later in the week. I assumed you saw it before I did. This now makes sense why you didn't tell me this, because you hadn't seen it either. But it was absolutely amazing, and that's a great jumping off point to talk about the casting of Justified for season 6. And again, the great roster of the ongoing actors and actresses like Erica Tazel and Jacob Pitts and everyone else that's a part of it, in addition to, obviously, Walt Goggins, Tim Oliphant, who, in my biased estimation, are first ballot Hall of Fame candidates as actors. But you have some really great ones that are being introduced this season as well. Also, too, supposedly at some point there may be the return of Patton Oswalt as Constable Bob. I haven't heard that for sure, and they had teased that for last year, and it didn't happen. Supposedly, by the way, they're not completely done in production with it yet, which is interesting because just over 3 months from now, we're going to be talking about the end of the series. So they can't be too far from the end, but supposedly they're still working out a few of the last details. But obviously the first several episodes have been shot, and here's what we have to tell you as far as characters that are going to be on there. I will tell you this, too, Jason. Our good friend and fellow FDH Lounge dignitary Ken Detweiler, who was going to join us today if his schedule permitted. At the last minute, he was unable to join us. Perhaps he'll be able to pop in at least once before the end of the season, too. He's a huge fanboy of Justified and able to speak on it very knowledgeably. He popped. I was at his housewarming party the other night, and he popped like you wouldn't believe when I told him about this. Sam Elliott, the same way you popped when I told you that. He will be on as the ex of Catherine Hale, which is, of course, Mary Steenburgen's character. Of course, Catherine Hale working with Wynn Duffy. They had roped Boyd at the end of last season into committing to do some bank robberies for them. He's going to be coming back into it, and ironically, Sam Elliott's character comes from your neck of the woods, because the last several years, according to this storyline, he's been out in the legal pot business in Colorado. He's come back to Kentucky with the money that he has and intending to basically stir some things up there, get back into good graces with Catherine Hale, etc. So Sam Elliott as another evil foil here for Raylan Givens. I am salivating, as I'm sure you are, at the thought of the first scene between Sam Elliott and Timothy Oliphant?
Well, very few times in life do two things converge so perfectly. And not to be cryptic, but take a step back. Feel free to look up Sam Elliott on IMDb if you need to. There is not a more perfect union than Sam Elliott and Justified. And I don't need to see anything. I don't need to know what the direction is. I don't need to know what his character's about. I don't need to see dialogue. Sam Elliott and Justified just works. And I'm glad they were able to slide it in before the conclusion of the series. I'm absolutely blown away still, and I cannot wait. So I'm just beside myself with excitement about Sam Elliott. And, yeah, that first exchange with the way the show is written is going to be priceless.
That is going to be amazing. And any of the scenes where he intersects, as there will be many of them, we know, with the character of Boyd, which is, of course, played by the outstanding, as we said, Walt Goggins. This other actor, you may have to take my word for it, because in terms of how great he is, because you may be a little less familiar with him than me. Does the name Garrett Dillahunt mean anything to you?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Again, where I saw him.
As we speak, though.
Okay. He actually, here's the funny thing. You're going to laugh when you see this. One of the things that he's known for is that he bears a fairly striking resemblance to former SNL cast member Will Forte. So when he plays a bad guy, it does sometimes kind of make you laugh because you're picturing Will Forte trying to play a bad guy. But I know him, as a lot of people do who are enthusiasts of Deadwood. He has the distinction of actually playing two separate characters on the show, which was very interesting. And the creator of it, John Milch, had to explain later on, these are two distinct characters. I didn't mean anything by casting the same actor twice. I just liked him in the one role, and then when he was done, subsequently, I wanted to use him in another role. He did very well on there. He was also, he's been on many other shows, The 4400, ER, Burn Notice. He was on, I think, the entire run of Raising Hope, for anybody out there that saw that. And again, you may have to take my word for it. Some other folks may have to as well, because he hasn't been as widely seen over the years as Sam Elliott. First of all, he's much younger, so in all fairness, that's part of it as well. He's still working his way up the food chain in Hollywood, although, again, as I said, from those roles there, he's a pretty well-established guy. He's done a lot of stage work as well. He's an excellent actor. He will be playing a special ops guy, a former special ops guy who has moved into doing private security. And what's not known right now is who he's working for. And apparently, from reading one or two of there are some non-spoiler reviews that are out there on the internet. You can already find reviews for at least episode 1 of the season. And again, there are no spoilers in there because that's the deal that's made when the critics go to do them. But it is indicated he's going to be on early in the season, probably even for the premiere that we're going to be seeing this week. Sam Elliott's going to be on pretty early. So you have those great characters on the board. You have some other established great characters that are there. There's the sense that you may have some of the other ones from over the years popping back onto the canvas. Again, Constable Bob would seem to be one. Oh, by the way, and while I'm thinking of it, the Garrett Dillahunt character, apparently he wants to buy the old Givens house. So that's how, I guess, he begins intersecting with Raylan Givens. I believe he wants to buy it on somebody else's behalf. So there's a lot to play with here when you look at some of the great character actors that are going to be joining the canvas this year, Jason.
Absolutely, and I do recognize Garrett Dillahunt, just not in the context of Deadwood. He's been on a number of episodes of a number of different shows that I've seen. As to his chops, we'll have to see how it goes when he's on the same screen with a Boyd Crowder and Raylan Givens. But absolutely, you have to expect that this product takes characters in the past that we haven't thought necessarily were going to be a great fit. And I think the great example of that is Max Bennett. Whether you're talking to hipsters or the real students of this show, the Max Bennett character is revered almost beyond any other besides the top 3 to 5 people in the show. And that was a character, if you had said, this is who's going to play this, essentially this big bad for this season, you would have been like, okay, that's going to flop, that's going to be horrible. And in this case, we're looking at a few characters that you look at and go, they are freaking made for it. They are perfectly tuned for this show. So the question is not, is it going to be good? The question is, how good is it going to be? And again, even though we know for a fact now that they don't write the show largely hugely in advance, but what we do know is that they know that this is the end. So the characters combined with the writing process is probably going to set up to something phenomenal. Now, I don't want to set expectations like we did going into season 5, but one's got to believe that this show in this season, characters and all, is really going to come together nicely.
I think so as well. And again, you raised 2 excellent points there. One about Derek Dillahunt, and again, you gave me the opportunity to correct a misperception I might have put out there. I certainly don't mean to suggest this guy is an obscure actor. What you said about him is perfect. He's a guy where you may not know the name, but when you see him, oh, I remember that guy from such and such. And there's a lot of actors out there that are like that.
The second I pulled up his IMDb profile, I was like, oh, that guy.
Yes,
one of those.
Yes, he's a that guy actor, which that's a pretty good level out there in Hollywood. Merely that people are like, oh, I know who that guy is. I may not necessarily remember his name or anything like that. So that's a pretty good level right there. And again, if I misspoke and gave the sense that I thought he was obscure, you gave me a good way to kind of correct that, because he's certainly not obscure. He's been around. He's done a lot of good stuff. And as far as the casting goes too, some people have even gone so far as to say over the years, is there a little bit of hubris involved? Are they doing stunt casting? I don't know, but every time they've pulled it off. Constable Bob with Patton Oswalt, that's not something you would have thought would have worked, particularly the moment of truth for his character in the now legendary Decoy episode. And the same season, Mike O'Malley as that guy, Nicky Augustine, that would make you pee your pants in fear. If you saw him walking down the street, they shaved his head. They had him lose a bunch of weight. Those are the 2 best examples I can think of where they were going against character type somewhat. I mean, there was a lot of like Patton Oswalt goofiness in the Constable Bob character, but when push came to shove, there wasn't a lot of what we've come to associate with Patton Oswalt in that character. And Nicky Augustine is pretty far from what we've ever seen from Mike O'Malley, past, present, or maybe even future. So they pulled it off when it seemed unlikely. Now you got guys that are probably looking like they're set for these roles. So you got to figure if it's less of a challenge for them to pull off because they're not going against type, maybe the expectations, fairly or unfairly, should be even higher.
Well, absolutely. And I would actually go so far as to say, and it would be wildly insane for me to actually be arrogant enough on Justified's behalf to say this, but it's almost like Justified could be a career maker. It could be the thing that changes you from a typecasted individual into something else. And Mike O'Malley might be the best example of that, because everybody knows him from his sitcoms. His little, like, oh, he's the guy who's married and always has to deal with his wife's shenanigans. That is not the character that he played on Justified, not in the slightest. And you can go down the list and you'll see tons of them. Jim Beaver, who this is kind of in his wheelhouse, who played Sheriff Shelby, or Drew, if you're just, hopefully that wasn't a big spoiler for you. Then you go down, you've got Bubba Gump from Forrest Gump playing Elson Limehouse, Michael Rappaport as Darryl Crow Jr., Colt Rhodes, which had a nice little stretch there. I know him from Mystery Alaska, which is a comedic movie about a pond hockey team in Alaska. Okay, and he came in and played a wonderful, deep, layered character. We really could do this all day long. Margot Martindale, Alicia Witt, who I know from Christmas movies, believe it or not. You really could go down the list and say that there are easily 20 different characters played by people who've been typecasted their whole career and now Justified has given them an opportunity to be so much more. And that's a staple of great shows. There are tons of great shows throughout the last 20 years that went on to change the way actors are perceived, and Justified one of them.
That's a great point. I hadn't really thought about that, but their macro place in the industry. You're absolutely right about that. It has the chance to be a transformative place for actors as far as what they get a chance to do with their roles. And, the chance to show that they can do so much more than what the public associates with them. And you said about Mike O'Malley with the sitcom thing here. The one that he was best known for, I think, was Yes Dear, which is a one where, there's no other way there's no more sensitive way to put this. That basically you had the svelte couple of the show, and then you had the not-so-svelte couple that lived in the house behind them or whatever, and Mike O'Malley was one half of the not-so-svelte couple. And they played it for laughs that way. This isn't just me being insensitive. That's the way they wrote the show, and that's the character he was playing, was the bumbling, overweight guy, and, again, did so much more than this on Justified. I want to ask you a couple questions about expectations for this season and for looking ahead specifically. I was reminded when I was reviewing a little bit of the season finale from last year, the stuff with the cartel. Granted, they end up the assassins end up getting killed by the marshals in the end, and yet it still seems to me like it's a loose thread if it's not followed up on this year, because you got to ask yourself, would the cartel just be like, yeah, okay, we sent a couple guys up there, they didn't get the job done, we'll call it even. Are you expecting to see more of them? Because I haven't seen any indications we're going to get that.
I can't, for the life of me, really put my finger on the pulse of the importance of the cartel angle.
Okay.
I'm sure there will be references at minimum. There will be the aftermath from it. But even when it was happening, I was wondering how long-term this is, because you get the impression that a big part of this season is going to be what's in the book that they keep referencing about Boyd, and are they going to basically set up this RICO case and try to get Boyd on a number of things and put him away for a very long time? And if that's the case, I almost have to assume that the cartel thing will get downplayed slightly.
You have to think so. I think that's the key as well, and that if they appear, it'll probably be peripheral to the big part of the season. And indeed, that's probably why I haven't heard anything about it as I've been out there trolling the internet to find out what kind of stuff's getting posted, looking around, because, again, it may get addressed, but it won't be a big part of the season here. As far as the end game of this thing here, I think what most of us are expecting, because of the kind of show that it is, Breaking Bad, you had the deal of where there has to be the consequences for the main anti-hero. It had to end badly for Walter White, which, spoiler alert, it did, at least in general it did. I won't get to anything beyond that. But as far as this goes, we expect Raylan to get the ending where he ends up, whether it be in Miami with Winona and the baby or whatever. We expect that something bad's going to happen to Boyd. He's either going to be behind bars in jail or, I think, more likely dead. The thing with Ava, is that one of the big variables here? Because I think, and particularly the way she expressed her fear on the bridge to Raylan, and the way that he's kind of always just kind of brushed off stuff with her and really not always kind of been the nicest to her for somebody who cheated on her at the end of their relationship. You'll be fine, don't worry about it. I'm expecting she's probably going to be okay, because I don't think in the end, because I don't think you can have a happy ending if she gets killed, right? Because in a sense, the blood's going to be on Raylan's hands, because we've already seen he doesn't take it seriously, the threat of any danger to her.
I think the Ava storyline, dare I say, will be critical. I don't know that necessarily means that it ends with her dying in any sort of way. We talk about this and you spin it in your head 100 different ways, and I think what most people are inclined to believe is what's not going to happen, is that Raylan will bring Boyd to justice. He will use Ava to do so, allowing them to repair his relationship with Art. Art retires, walks off into the sunset with his wife, and Raylan takes over Art's spot. I think that's way too predictable, but I do think that Ava will play a major role. Now, the question is, does Ava stay loyal to Raylan now in his attempts to get Boyd taken down because he's the guy that came to her aid and got her out of that Orange is the New Black situation and not Boyd? Or does her loyalty come and go like the wind depending on what happens throughout the course of the season? And I think that has a little bit more to do with what will transpire on Ava's part. But absolutely, I think without a shadow of a doubt, it's going to be critical in the realm of important storylines going into this season.
Right. I think that's true as well. In the next 60 to 90 seconds or so, because that's more or less what we're down to, anything else that we didn't hit that you're looking forward to seeing this year? Any themes for the season, certain things, or anything else in between?
I think we pretty much covered it because I'm intentionally not trying to have too much information. I don't want to be swayed either way. So in my mind, I know the new characters. I know what's happened. I have an idea what I think might happen in the future, but I'm really just kind of sitting back and enjoying the ride.
And I think that's what everybody should do as well. We talked about this last year when it was going on week to week. Is that, again, it's a self-contained episode. We talked about that as far as what you're viewing on a given night. But, again, it's part of a bigger tapestry, 5 seasons of 13 episodes. So every episode is 1/165th of the bigger picture. And, again, the last 13, I think, carry some of the very biggest weight of the entire series. So, again, expectations are running high. Everybody wants to see them stick the landing the way Breaking Bad did. But your final thing there, Jason, your final point was very well taken. We should enjoy the ride, and we can be critical from week to week. I'm not saying that we're going to be getting out the pom-poms every week, although I'd like nothing better because I had enough of it last year where it was like, oh, gee, outside of 5.5, it hasn't been as great as we thought. But I'm sure it's going to be better. I think they've been gearing the whole thing for this. I think your advice is well taken. Let's enjoy the ride, and again, even if there are weeks that are disappointing, let's kind of try and reserve a little bit more judgment and see what happens the next week. They have less room to fix things than they did last year because they're down to the last season. We have a slow week. It better pick up the next week. But great advice from you for the viewers out there of the show, as always. Thanks very much, my man. I always enjoy doing these with you. I feel like we're providing a good service to the Justified community out there, and your fanboyism and level of research and dedication to this show is a very big part of that. Thank you so much, my friend.
No problem.
All right, everybody. Thank you all for checking this out, and we will catch you for Justified 6.1 with our first episode recap of the final season.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the Periodic Table of Elements.